Hi, my name is Neil Keller. In this video I'd like to go over a simple exercise for the knees and just a little bit of back history. I've had knee problems on and off for probably pretty much most of my yoga career, and part of my doing yoga and teaching it has been about learning to deal with these different problems, learning to deal with them intelligently, so rather than avoiding the problem, trying to figure out what I need to do with muscle control or the way I do exercises to make things like knee problems not a problem. But anyway, this is one exercise that I found very helpful for my knees. And just recently I found that while doing the equivalent of going downstairs, say, actually I was in a park recently or at a beach and was stepping down some stones. There's quite a big gap between them. So stepping down, I noticed I had some problem with one of my knees or even one of my hips. I can't remember precisely, but what I took from that was, okay, I need to do some exercises for my knees, basically that action, so that I can train my knee and my hip to handle that sort of action without hurting. And then when I got back from my holiday, I came across a post by Strength Sensei about a particular exercise called the Peterson squat, and I read a bit more about it. And this exercise supposedly works on the vastus medialis obliquus and trains it so that it helps protect the knee. Vastus medialis aside, I tried my own variation of this exercise, and it seems to be helping my knees quite a bit, both my knees and my hips. So just a quick demonstration. So basically you need some sort of step, and so using this at the gym, I use the back end of a bench press rack. There's a raised platform I can stand on, and hopefully this won't break. Actually, let's change that. I'm going to use yoga blocks instead. They feel a little bit more stable, but if you have a stair or some other raised platform that you can use. And so basically the idea is to stand on your platform with heel lifted and the lifted foot in front of the toes. So if you're standing, your working leg would step behind, so it's in line with your heel. So if you're standing on the step, you could move one leg back to the step behind you and step on it. So I'm going to move my feet a little bit back so I'm more towards the middle of the block. But anyway, from here, you could start from here, stand up and lower down, or you could start in the high position, lower down, and then stand up. And if you find that your block is too high, you can't go all the way down, use something. You could either, if you can't change the height of the block or whatever it is that you're standing on, change the height of the surface that you're reaching down for. So in this case, you could use another block or another book or whatever you've got. So now I can shorten the range of motion. So I'm working, so you can work within your comfort zone, somewhere where if you go too far down, you find your knee hurts, then raise, then only go down a little bit. Another point, just a quick point, this is a variation of the Peterson squat. In the video I watched of the Strength Sensei and his model, what he had to do, starting from the bottom position, as she lifted the leg, the heel of the working leg went down, then the heel went up, and she went back down again. For myself, I keep the heel lifted as I go up and as I go down. Now, so that was a demonstration. You can stop the video here. If you have knee problems though, there are a couple of provisos, and one person, I think is some guy named Boyle, doesn't recommend doing this exercise if you already have knee problems. Now I, on the other hand, have knee problems and have been using this and have found that it has helped me overcome those problems. that being said, I've had knee problems where walking along my knee would sort of like fall out of joint and I'd have to sort of shake it back in, or more recently, 2 years ago, I had to go to the equivalent of a physiotherapist. They're called Twaina. The action is similar to chiropractors called Twaina. And they had to massage it. Occasionally I had to go to them to have it massaged back into place. So if you've got those sort of circumstances, you might want to leave this exercise out. I'll leave it to your discretion. But basically when I started doing this exercise, there was, I've been working on knee awareness anyway. And in previous videos, I was talking about using the long hip muscles as well as the vastus muscles, using the vastus muscles to take out the slack from the long hip muscles. And one area in which that has been helpful is in exercises like this. So if you have knee problems, and assuming that your knee is tight enough that you can do a little bit of a bend without too much problem, what I would suggest is, while learning this exercise, learn to develop some vastus control. Learn to turn on your vastus muscles so you can take out the slack from the long hip muscles. Also learn how to stabilize your shin against rotation so that those same muscles have a firm foundation from which to work. Now, one reason I think that this exercise is helpful is because the heel is lifted, that forces the calf muscles to activate. And the calf, the gastrocnemius in particular, that muscle has attachments which cross the back of the knee. And in one of my videos from maybe a year or two ago, I was talking about something called the one-legged get-up. And I'm not sure if I went into the details in that exercise, but one of the things that I taught in that exercise was, prior to lifting the knee, actually engaging the calf. So prior to lifting this knee, actually engaging the calf of this knee so that this knee had a bit more stability. And so when doing this Peterson, or this variation of the Peterson squat, one thing that you can work on is making sure that your calf is active. And it's going to be active anyway because the heel is lifted. But what you can try doing is making sure that these two tendons here feel like they have tension, so that your gastrocnemius is active, so that it can help keep your knee stable. Now I work with, depending on how I feel, I work with different things as I'm doing that exercise. And what I found is, on some days I like to do it just a shallow squat, so maybe doing it on something about this high, a bit slow. Other days I find I can go a lot deeper, so it might be something that is maybe that high, like so. And actually that's my good knee. But just a point there, in all cases I'm working at going slowly and smoothly, and I'm trying to control the way that I do the exercise. In one of my previous videos, it might have been about 2 or 3 videos ago, talked a lot about the long hip muscles doing this sort of action. And the first part of that was stabilizing the shin against rotation so that those muscles had a firm anchor point. Second part was inflating or activating the vastus muscles so that it took the slack out of those muscles, so that then it was easier to use those muscles to control the hip joint. Now the video after that, I talked about making adjustments. So adjusting the relative position. So say in a forward bend, could adjust the position of the pelvis or hip bone relative to the thigh bone. So maybe turning it this way or this way, or maybe adjusting this way or this way, so that I had muscle control. And the idea there is that in certain positions, it's easier to activate particular muscles. And in this sort of action going down, I'd suggest that the one possible adjustment you can make is as you go down, try tilting the pelvis back so that the muscles at the front and the back of the thigh have optimum length to help control the pelvis and hip joint. So, and actually what might be a better thing to say is be aware of the position of your pelvis. So say if you start in the high position, calf is active. Here you could try adjusting the forward back tilt of your pelvis. See if there's a position. So here it feels like I got a little bit more tension on the front of the thigh. Here I can feel my sitting bone lifting. It's kind of, you'll have to experiment with it and see if that makes any difference to when you squat. In a lot of cases it might not matter, so you can just ignore it, focus on other things. But another important quality is the equivalent of turning the hip left or right relative to the pelvis. For this exercise, it's suggested that the foot be turned out, say about 30 degrees. That's the basic position. But what you may find is from that position, you can rotate slightly outwards or inwards relative to the thigh so that your butt muscle can activate. And that actually, when I first started doing this exercise, I noticed for one leg, actually it might have been my left leg, I noticed for one leg I had to adjust the position of my pelvis so that I could get the butt muscle to activate. So do be aware of that. The butt muscle can be all the muscle. What you're trying to do is find a position where all muscles, not just one muscle, where all muscles can work together to help support your knee joint, make it feel safe, make it pain-free while you are doing this exercise. Now more recently, so talked about the calf, making sure those muscles are active. More recently when I was doing this exercise, I found that I needed to perhaps favor the outer edge of the foot and perhaps even the outer gastrocnemius while doing this exercise. So rather than saying, okay, you have to do that all of the time, depending on your situation, you might find it helpful to try rotating your shin and foot slightly inwards, which emphasizes the inner edge of the foot, more likely outwards. But play around. If you continually have knee problems or it doesn't feel quite comfortable, you can try adjusting the relative rotation of your shins. So if you stand with heels lifted and then rotate your shins outwards and inwards, you may find that rotating them outwards relative to the feet, the outer edge of your forefoot presses down, rotating inwards, the inner edge of your feet press down. Do take the time to practice that so you can feel the connection rather than just, oh yeah, it does that. Do it so you can feel it for yourself. And then when doing this squat-like exercise, you can adjust the position, find a shin rotation that works for you as you go down. And one reason for doing this exercise slowly and smoothly is it gives you a chance to make any necessary adjustments so that your foot, your knee, and your hip all feel comfortable and there is no pain. And if there is pain, then stop what you're doing. Stop, readjust, take a rest. Again, going back to previous video, and hopefully I've already posted it, I talked about creating an upward pull on the inguinal ligament using the external obliques. I might have accidentally said rectus abdominis in one part of that video, but the external obliques, you can create an upward pull on the inguinal ligaments, and that is one other action that I've been experimenting with. And again, none of these, or rather I should point out, none of these actions seem to work all of the time. One of the things when working with muscle control is that you, especially when you're dealing with problems, is you constantly have to be on the ball. One day one thing will work, another day you have to play around with it and try something else. It's sort of like one problem uncovers another problem, or your brain sort of takes over control of that. Basically one problem uncovers another problem, and sometimes you end up going in a circle, but if you keep on approaching it in different ways, then you actually do spiral in towards the root of the problem. But here again, what I found for this exercise was on some days I found that creating an upward pull on the inguinal ligament, either on the side of the leg that's doing the work or on both sides at the same time, I found that also gave me a sense of, it allowed me to do the exercise without pain. Now notice there I was doing it with hands lifted. A lot of the time I do use a support. I do keep my hand on a banister or on the wall or something to keep me balanced, and I would suggest you do the same too, especially if you're doing this exercise when you have knee problems. It gives you a chance to stop yourself if you do encounter knee problems, and it allows you to focus on controlling your leg rather than focusing on worrying about balance. However, as you get better at doing this, what I would suggest is do work at the balance component, because when you're outside and relying on your knees, you might not have that hand support to help you. So do work towards balancing while doing this exercise. Now quickly, what I tend to do, very basic, I try to do this exercise 5 times a week whenever I go to the gym. And generally I just do 3 sets of 10. Sometimes I may rest in between. One thing to work on, because this is quite calf intensive, you will need to work on stretching your calves at some point afterwards if you want to maintain your ankle flexibility. And that's another point. I didn't talk about how high to lift the heel. You could try lifting your heel to maximum and doing that exercise and keeping it maximally lifted. That's one way to do it. And what I would suggest is do not do this on yoga blocks. This is all I have. Do find something a bit sturdier. So you could do it at maximum ankle height, at maximum heel height, with maximum heel lift. What I would suggest though, and I do this quite a bit, is just lift your heel a little bit. Find a height that is comfortable for you. At the same time, do try to activate at the back of the knee. Keep that heel height as you go down, as you go up. And if you want to add the heel drop as the strength sensei suggests, one way you could do it, so lower down, as you come up, come all the way up, then lower the heel. Then lift the heel and come back down again. So that's one way you could do the exercise, and if you find that your calf ankle gets tired as you do this exercise, that might be a way to give yourself a brief rest as you do it. And one thing to note, you could lower your heel, I have to be careful here, and shift your weight back. Or you could lower your heel and just allow your heel to lightly touch the floor. Do be aware that if you want to rest your ankle, you may have to shift back. So then in order to lift your heel and stay balanced, you'll have to, so you could touch your heel down, shift back so you can rest. But then in order to lift the heel again, you're going to have to shift your weight forward so weight is over your forefoot, so that then you can lift your heel and stay balanced. Now, there is one other exercise that I've been doing to help my knees, that I do regularly, that isn't just muscle control, and that is a squat. And I'll talk about that in the next video. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Hope this was helpful. if you have got knee problems and you are choosing to do this exercise, do be careful. Do work at gradually extending or at extending the height, how high you go, how low you go. Work at gradually doing that. Another thing that you could do is to simulate outside conditions. Work at reaching the lifted leg forwards. But again, for those variations, work at it slowly. Stay within a range of motion that keeps your knees pain-free. Work at gradually or gently extending that range of motion. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Namaste. If you're interested, if you have problems with controlling your vastus muscles, or you want to learn a bit more about the long hip muscles, about learning to feel in control, pretty much all of the muscles of the leg from the hip bone down to the toes, do check out my muscle control and proprioception videos, which I have a link in the description box. Thanks again. Namaste.